Happy Turkey Day! It's Thanksgiving morning here in the United States, and before I go stuff my face and pass out, I'm gonna build me a new tiny whoop. I thought I would take the time to share with you guys and do a detailed build on my personal favorite parts for a race legal tiny whoop. Some rules are local, but in many cases you can't run 7mm or brushless motors. So I'm going to go over all my favorite parts to do a true 6mm racing tiny whoop build. The first thing to start with is you need your cockroach frame. I previously was flying the stock Inductrix frame. This thing costs half the price and is twice as strong. I will never go back. These guys are awesome. This is the frame that we dyed the other day in the Tiny Whoop Soup video. If you haven't seen that, make sure you check it out. I give detailed instructions on how to add permanent color to your Tiny Whoop frames. The next major part of this build is the BETAFPV version 1.1 F3 flight controller. This is the Frsky S-Bus version with OSD. At this point, I won't fly anything without an OSD. And to be quite honest, I was skeptical with this board at first, but right now it is by far my favorite Tiny Whoop flight controller. Previous to this, I was running the COCKROACH V2s. They fly phenomenal, and I thought nothing could beat them. They use the MCU 6000 gyro, which if any of you are familiar with that, it is pretty much the go-to gyro for a nice flying board. Really why I was turned off with the BETAFPV board is it uses the MCU 6500 gyro, just like most Tiny Whoop boards. I thought, it'll fly like every other board, no big deal, not very impressed. It's got OSD, great. I tried one of these things, and I am super sold. As of right now, I am not gonna fly another board this season. I love them, so definitely check out the BETAFPV Tiny Whoop flight controller, #1 in my book. The next item I have is the FX900 Tiny Whoop custom-made cameras. This is the circular polarized version. It comes with the mount and of course the camera itself. Normally for a racing build I would do a dipole, but this is all they had left in stock, and I want to get in the air, so I'm going to run this for now. Once the polarized antenna is broken, I'm just going to replace it with a dipole. I don't have any currently, or I would do it now, so we're just going to get this thing together and go flying with it. Next on my list is the Newbie Drone Gold Motors. I started flying these probably about halfway through the season last year, and I have never burnt out a single one of these motors. They last and they last. They do lose power over time, but I've never burnt one out, and that's a pretty big thing in my book. So I love these Newbie Drone Gold motors, and I'm going to keep flying them for now. For the Canopy, I like the Stingray Canopy from Tiny Whoop. This is the hydro dipped True Flame version. I like fire. You know, good classic mullet mod. These things add a little bit of weight, but I think it's worth it. It helps protect the board, it helps protect the camera, and I just like the look of the canopy on them, so I'm going to go with this one here from Tiny Whoop. And the last item on the list is I decided to try the King Kong 3-blade props. I've mostly been running the standard 4-blade Inductrix style props. You pretty much see them everywhere. There's a lot of manufacturers, they have their own version of those props. They're pretty much everybody's go-to. I have tried the Raycon Heli 3-blade props, and I'm not a fan. They have a tendency to not want to stay on the motor shafts, and they kind of snap fairly easily. So this time around, I got these nice yellow guys. I think they'll complement the color scheme of this particular Tiny Whoop, and I just want to give them a go, and we'll see how they perform. So that's it. Those are my parts. Gee whiz, I guess it's time to start putting this thing together. We'll get the flight controller out of the box here, if I can get it open. This thing comes with pretty much everything you need. We've got screws. We've got the flight controller itself. Comes pre-soldered with your 2.0 connector on it. That's a bonus, definitely right there. And they do also give you the standard 1.25 millimeter connector if you are running those style batteries. But this is going to come in handy, and we are going to use this, and I will show you what I mean as we do this build. Okay, there is some soldering involved on this board because it does have the OSD. What is cool is they are actually through holes instead of pads, so you're going to get a little bit better bite with your solder. Let me just get my iron heated up, and we're going to tin these guys. Helping hands. If you don't have these, buy some. Definitely buy the helping hands. They're very helpful. We have our camera. We're going to modify it. We need to cut the video wire for the OSD. Just going to give that the old snipper right in the middle. And this is the part that I was talking about. We're going to use this lead. Incidentally, that'll also plug into a motor lead. Just trim this a little bit. We don't need 3 feet of wire here. Strip our wires back. I like to use a razor knife. Right now I'm going to expose about 1/4 inch on these. Put a little slice in the wire. Give it a strip. Give it a strip. Make sure you don't use too much pressure if you're using this technique. You can cut right through the wire very easily, but at the same rate, they also strip very easily. I'm going to round me up a couple small pieces of heat shrink. Alright, let's get a couple small pieces of this. 1 and 2. Gonna put all this aside. There we go, heat shrink's prepped on the wire. Start by twisting the exposed leads together. Okay, they're twisted together nice and tight. We're going to straighten them out so we have a nice, even, straight solder joint. Okay. The start of our joint, and now I'm going to put some solder on it. Always tin your tip and get a lot of solder in there. And you'll see why I get a lot of solder on here in just a moment. Really load it up, make sure you get it all the way in there. Now I'm going to clip my lead. Clip it flush. And I can push the heat shrink into position. Heat shrink's in place. A little bit of hot. Connection 1 is done. Oh, and by the way, don't use a lighter when you're doing heat shrink. Either use a hot air gun or use a butane torch like this. Lighter is not the correct way to do it, and you're going to leave carbon on everything. I promise you, if you don't have enough solder in this joint, you will regret it, because when you cut that excess, it's going to break. And in some cases, you may not have enough wire left to be able to resolder to. So that's the first pigtail from the BETAFPV board. This is the one that is included with it. And I have an old motor. It's a burnt out motor. Plugs in perfectly, a 1.25 connector. So there's my leads. I'm gonna give these guys a little snipperoo. Give them a little strip. Since these are going through the through hole, I'm gonna strip them at about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, now we're ready to connect the camera to the board. It's going to be a lot easier if I just simply unplug this lead. Get the flight controller back in here. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tin the back side of all these first. It should make it a little bit easier. Don't put a lot of solder on here. Just enough to cover the outside of that pad. Again, a little on your tip. Heat on the pad. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. I'm going to get my wire in position. And I'm going to heat the pad from the back side now. Perfect. Now we're going to do the VTX wire. Tools like tweezers can help when dealing with these super tiny wires. And in it goes. So we have our camera side, we have our VTX side. Now we need power for the camera. I'm just going to use another old motor lead. I'm going to use the blue for my ground lead. Position, a little bit of quick heat, right through it goes. All that's left is the positive lead, the 5 volts for the camera, and we go. Looks like I made that one a little longer than the other. Alright, there's our board. We have everything soldered up and ready to go now. Put a little twist in the camera wire, try to keep it all together. Okay, let's go to the frame. I really don't think there's a designated front or back on this frame, but if you see where the bracket goes, there's 2 parts that kind of angle to the front. Well, that's what I'm going to call the front, and the reason why is there's a little bit of a larger hole in the back that allows clearance for your USB so you can get plugged in while everything's together nice and easily. So I'm calling this the back. Install your grommets. Make sure you get them in there all the way. I'm going to get the power wire in between this rear standoff and the duct. There you go. Carefully push the board into position. Can be a little bit of a snug fit, but it will definitely go. I'm going to put 2 screws in to start. I'm going to do the front screw. You don't need to murder them in, just snug them up. And do the back screw. There, just nice and snug. Okay, time for motors. Look at those. Aren't those pretty? That not only are the bottoms of the motors different colors, but you also have different color leads. This is your right-hand motor with the red-blue, green bottom. This is your left-hand turn motor with the white, black, and the black bottom. So we need to make sure that we get these installed in the right position. This duct and this duct are your right hand. This and this are your left hand. When I slide them in, I like to make sure that the wires are even with the struts. Just go ahead and give that motor a good push. Sometimes they can be quite snug, but they will definitely go in there. As you slide in the motor, be careful, there's a little nub on the bottom of it. You don't want to pinch your wires in that. Push the motor until the bottom touches that nub. After that, I like to twist my leads. Just helps keep everything nice and neat. Okay, I'm going to get the other motors in. Here's a pro tip if you're having a hard time getting your motors in. Sometimes you can use a small socket. In this case it's 30 seconds. It's literally just the first thing I grab. And you'll see that the outside of the socket is about the same size as the motor. And sometimes this can give you a little bit more leverage and make it easier to push the motor into the hole. I like to keep my wires neat, and to do so, you can get these dental elastic bands. They're super cheap. I only paid a couple dollars for this bag, and it's probably a lifetime supply. 3/16. So you can use these to help get the motor wires under control. Slide right down nice and tight. Plug the old motor in. I like to take and tuck excess back under the frame. There. Just shove a little bit of the wire under the frame. It'll help retain it. Now I'm just going to repeat the last three here. Great, that looks pretty good. Now we're ready to mount the camera. Camera should slide into position. Make sure it's seated all the way, that way it'll be nice and centered. Connectors plugged in. Okay, for the canopy, what I like to do is I've got some of this 5-second fix stuff. I like to apply it around the hole to add a little bit of extra strength. Just gonna put a nice little bead around the hole. Make it solid. that's been 5 seconds. I'm gonna do it here. Install propellers. Ta-da! There it is, complete. My personal version of a race spec tiny whoop. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have a second part to this video where I'm gonna do software and the setup. Inside of that, I'm gonna share PIDs and I'll do a differential dump and have all that up as well too. So that's it for this one. This is how I do my hardware for my race spec tiny whoops. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click like, maybe click subscribe, come back again another time, check out another video too. I'd appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.